The National Electrical Code, or NEC, does not explicitly specify maximum mounting height for electrical meters. However, the National Electrical Safety Code, or NESC, provides some guidance. Section 17 of the NESC, specifically the 2017 edition, addresses meter mounting heights. For overhead meters, the NESC specifies a minimum mounting height of 9 feet above the ground or any other accessible surface. For underground meters, the NESC specifies a minimum mounting height of 6 feet above the ground or other accessible surface. It is crucial to understand that in the absence of specific requirements in either the NEC or the NESC, local codes and the interpretation of the authority having jurisdiction, or AHJ, will govern the allowable mounting height. The AHJ is the local governing body responsible for enforcing electrical codes and safety regulations. They may have specific regulations or guidelines that dictate the permissible range for meter mounting heights in a particular area. These local codes and AHJ interpretations can vary significantly depending on the location, so it is always advisable to consult with the local AHJ to determine the applicable requirements for meter mounting heights in any given area. When determining the appropriate mounting height for an electrical meter, several additional considerations should be taken into account. Firstly, accessibility for meter reading and maintenance is paramount. The meter should be mounted at a height that allows utility personnel to easily and safely read the meter and perform any necessary maintenance or repairs. Secondly, safety concerns must be addressed. The mounting height should be chosen to prevent unauthorized access to the meter and to minimize the risk of electrical hazards. Thirdly, aesthetic considerations may also play a role in determining the appropriate mounting height. While functionality and safety are the primary concerns, the meter should be mounted in a way that is visually appealing and does not detract from the overall aesthetics of the building or property. In summary, while the NEC does not explicitly specify a maximum mounting height for electrical meters and the NESC specifies minimum heights, the allowable mounting height may ultimately be determined by local codes and the interpretation of the AHJ. It is always best to consult with the local AHJ to ensure compliance with all applicable requirements and to ensure that the meter is mounted safely and in accordance with best practices. When installing a meter, bear in mind the need for accessibility and the prevention of unauthorized access that could lead to electrical hazards. Remember that you should always refer to the local AHJ to determine the specific requirements for meter mounting heights in the relevant area. Consider that the NEC serves as a comprehensive set of standards for electrical installations. Even in the absence of a specific rule addressing meter height, other NEC articles may provide relevant guidance. Article 110.26, for example, addresses working space about electrical equipment. While it doesn't directly specify meter height, it emphasizes the need for sufficient space for safe operation and maintenance. This could indirectly influence meter placement to ensure adequate working clearance. Article 230 covers service entrances, which include the service meter. While it primarily focuses on service conductors and equipment, it underscores the importance of proper installation and accessibility of service equipment, which naturally extends to the meter. Furthermore, Article 408 pertains to switchboards and panel boards. While not directly applicable to meters, it outlines requirements for accessibility and working space around electrical equipment, reinforcing the general principle of safe and convenient access for maintenance. These articles, although not explicitly addressing meter height, establish the underlying principles of accessibility, safety, and proper installation that should inform the decision-making process. Now, let's further elaborate on the NESC and its role in specifying meter mounting heights. The NESC, unlike the NEC, is primarily concerned with the safety of utility workers and the public in relation to electrical supply and communication lines. Section 17 of the NESC, which covers protective arrangements, includes specific requirements for meter mounting heights. As previously mentioned, it mandates a minimum height of 9 feet for overhead meters and 6 feet for underground meters. The rationale behind these minimum heights is to ensure that meters are not easily accessible to unauthorized personnel, reducing the risk of tampering, vandalism, or accidental contact with energized parts. These heights also provide adequate clearance for utility workers to perform their duties safely, such as meter reading, maintenance, and repairs. It's important to note that the NESC is not a mandatory code in all jurisdictions. Its adoption and enforcement vary depending on local regulations and the policies of the utility companies operating in a particular area. However, even in areas where the NESC is not formally adopted, it is often considered a best practice guide for ensuring electrical safety. Let's examine the role and authority of the AHJ. The AHJ is the individual or organization responsible for enforcing electrical codes and safety standards in a given jurisdiction. This could be a local building inspector, a fire marshal, or a designated electrical inspector. The AHJ has the authority to interpret and enforce the NEC, the NESC, and any other applicable local codes or regulations. In the absence of specific requirements in the NEC or the NESC, the AHJ has the discretion to determine the allowable meter mounting height based on their professional judgment and local conditions. The AHJ may consider factors such as the type of building, the surrounding environment, the presence of any obstructions, and the potential for hazards. The AHJ may also consult with utility companies and other stakeholders to arrive at a decision that is both safe and practical. It is essential to communicate with the local AHJ early in the planning process to obtain their approval for the proposed meter mounting height. Failure to do so could result in delays, rework, or even rejection of the installation. Now let's discuss additional factors that are considered when determining the appropriate mounting height. Accessibility for meter reading and maintenance is a paramount concern. The meter should be located at a height that allows utility personnel to easily and safely read the meter and perform any necessary maintenance or repairs. The height should not be so high that it requires the use of ladders or special equipment, nor should it be so low that it is difficult to access or read. Safety is another critical consideration. The mounting height should be chosen to prevent unauthorized access to the meter and to minimize the risk of electrical hazards. The meter should not be located in a place where it could be easily tampered with or vandalized. It should also be protected from accidental contact with vehicles, equipment, or other objects. Aesthetical considerations may also play a role. While functionality and safety are the primary concerns, the meter should be mounted in a way that is visually appealing and does not detract from the overall aesthetics of the building or property. The meter should be located in a discreet location and should be properly concealed or screened if necessary. Here is some further information on how to proceed when there are no codes. In the absence of specific code requirements, it is prudent to adopt a risk-based approach to determine the appropriate meter mounting height. This involves identifying potential hazards and implementing measures to mitigate those risks. For example, if the meter is located in an area where there is a risk of flooding, it should be mounted high enough to prevent water damage. If the meter is located in an area where there is a risk of vandalism, it should be protected with a tamper-resistant enclosure. If the meter is located in an area where there is a risk of accidental contact, it should be shielded or guarded. It is also advisable to consult with experienced electrical contractors and engineers to obtain their input on the appropriate meter mounting height. They can provide valuable insights based on their knowledge of local conditions and best practices. Ultimately, the goal is to strike a balance between safety, accessibility, and aesthetics to ensure that the meter is mounted in a way that is both functional and visually appealing. It should be installed in a manner that is not only compliant with the rules, but also safe. Let's delve into some specific examples to illustrate how these principles are applied in practice. Firstly, in residential settings, meters are typically mounted on the exterior wall of the house at a height that is easily accessible to meter readers. The height is usually between 4 feet and 6 feet above the ground. Secondly, in commercial buildings, meters may be located in a dedicated meter room or in an electrical closet. The height of the meter will depend on the available space and the layout of the room. It is important to ensure that there is adequate working space around the meter for maintenance and repairs. Thirdly, in industrial facilities, meters may be mounted on poles or on elevated structures. The height of the meter will depend on the specific requirements of the facility. It is important to ensure that the meter is protected from damage and that it is easily accessible for maintenance. Consider the role of the utility company. The utility company, that provides electricity to the building or property may have specific requirements for meter mounting heights. These requirements may be based on the utility company's own internal standards or on local regulations. It is important to contact the utility company to obtain their requirements before installing the meter. The utility company may also provide guidance on the appropriate location for the meter and the type of enclosure that should be used. They are primarily concerned with maintaining safe access to the meter for its employees. In some cases, the utility company may even install the meter themselves. When evaluating meter mounting height, consider the specific types of meters being used, as different meter designs and technologies might influence optimal placement. For example, older analog meters may require more direct line of sight for reading compared to newer digital meters that can be read remotely. Smart meters, which communicate data wirelessly, may have specific antenna placement requirements to ensure reliable communication with the utility company's network. These requirements might influence the optimal mounting height and location. Here is some additional information about ensuring long-term compliance. Once the meter has been installed, it is important to periodically inspect it to ensure that it is still in compliance with all applicable requirements. The inspection should include a visual check of the meter and its enclosure to ensure that there are no signs of damage or deterioration. The inspection should also include a check of the meter mounting height to ensure that it is still within the allowable range. If any issues are identified, they should be addressed promptly to prevent potential problems. Regular maintenance can help extend the life of the meter. It is good to ensure its continued compliance with the code requirements. Finally, here is a summary of key recommendations. Firstly, always consult with the local AHJ to determine the applicable requirements for meter mounting heights in the relevant area. Secondly, consider accessibility for meter reading and maintenance when determining the appropriate mounting height. Thirdly, address safety concerns by preventing unauthorized access and minimizing the risk of electrical hazards. Fourthly, take aesthetic considerations into account to ensure that the meter is mounted in a way that is visually appealing. Fifthly, adopt a risk-based approach in the absence of specific code requirements. Sixthly, consult with experienced electrical contractors and engineers for their input. Seventhly, contact the utility company to obtain their requirements and guidance. Eighthly, consider the specific types of meters being used and their unique requirements. Ninthly, periodically inspect the meter to ensure its continued compliance with all applicable requirements. Tenthly, maintain accurate records of the meter installation and any subsequent modifications. These records will be helpful in the event of future inspections or maintenance. By following these recommendations, the person can ensure that electrical meters are mounted safely, efficiently, and in compliance with all applicable requirements.